A 70-year-old woman vanishes without a trace.
It had been about a month since anybody had talked to her.
I even left her some messages. Can you please just call and let us know you're okay?
Her former caretaker tells police she went on a trip with friends.
She was coming back with some friends. Don't know who the people are.
Bank records showed that her card had been used at 2 different gas stations.
But a search of her home reveals the horrifying truth.
The detective went in the house. He said it reeked of incense. There were just a ton of flies.
What I see is a big mound of concrete and what looks like a human shoulder, hair.
It just absolutely broke my heart when I heard what had happened to her.
And the evidence points to a killer no one expected.
She's smart. She thought, hey, you know, I'm gonna have time to get my story straight.
Did you not kill her? Look at me. Look at me and be honest with me.
I am being honest.
You killed her, didn't you?
July 29th, 2021. It's a late summer day in rural North Carolina when Detective Tim Austin gets an unusual emergency call.
A call came into my desk that had been transferred from the communications center. Jhene Sparks is the sister-in-law of Lynn Sparks Keene, who lived in Linville Falls. She informed me that Lynn was 70 years old, had suffered from a traumatic brain injury in the past, and it had been about a month since anybody had talked to her, and she wanted somebody to go check on her.
According to Jhene, Lynn has disappeared before, but never for this long.
And the explanation from Jhene was that Lynn, she was an alcoholic in the past. She would go sometimes for a few weeks that nobody could get in touch with her. She was just that type of person. She did have a person living in her home that was helping take care of her.
Elizabeth Carserino was the live-in caretaker of Lynn Keene.
Jhene and her husband live in South Carolina, and the rest of the family lives in Florida. So it's been a blessing to have someone taking care of Lynn. But over a month ago, Elizabeth told them Lynn had unexpectedly left town.
According to Elizabeth, some friends had drove up from Louisiana, and they had partied, gotten drunk at the home, and the next morning Lynn decided that she wanted to go to Louisiana with her friends. My biggest fear was that if she had suffered from a traumatic brain injury in the past, and she's out here driving, she's consuming alcohol, she's with people, could they possibly do something to her? Could she lose control because of her age and her health concerns? We have to get everything out there that we can to try to find her. Every description of what she could be driving, who she could be with, what clothing she was wearing. So I started learning more about Lynn from her family. Time is our enemy, and we've got to work as fast as we can to try to locate her in a timely manner for her safety.
Lynn Sparks was born June 17, 1951, in Pinellas County, Florida. She and her older brother Butch were raised by a single mother.
Her mom, Wanda, was divorced from her dad, Jack. Lynn and Wanda were very, very close, almost more like sisters than mother and daughter. Lynn had a very adventurous personality. We both belonged to the swim club, so we would go and swim and carry on with all our friends.
In her early 20s, Lynn moved to the Florida Keys and worked as a bartender. There, she met Russell Keene, a businessman and father of 3.
Russell Keene was a very eccentric man. At the time that Lynn met my father-in-law, he was already in the process of going through a brutal divorce. He had all these wild and crazy ideas and aspirations, and a lot of them he put to fruition. He owned several Pizza Huts, a couple radio stations. He had a hotel down in the Turks and Caicos.
Russell was a bit older than Lynn was. She was truly in love with him.
By the time Russell's divorce was finalized, he'd lost most of his assets. So he and Lynn moved to North Carolina, where they lived in a home owned by Russell's father.
He never went back to work. He was too distraught. He felt like a failure and couldn't get past it. Lynn was the one that went waitressing at Louise's in order to make money for them to live off of. She was a trooper, but they were a pretty good, loving family, like any family with hardships.
Lynn got along well with Russell's adult children, especially his son Russ and his wife Kristen.
I remember the first time I went up to meet Lynn and Russell. It was such a warm welcome. It really was. I mean, Lynn was just such a sweet person and really kind of took me in. You know, she never had children. She kind of looked at Russ and I like her children.
But in 2001, Kristen's husband Russ was killed in the September 11th terrorist attacks.
Kind of was in a daze. And that's when mine and Lynn's relationship really started to grow. She was a sounding board for me. We all cried together a lot. It brought us closer. She was so close to my daughter. They both shared the love of reading, and they would go to the bookstore together. She's the one who got Masley her first library card. They had a very close relationship.
In 2016, the family was struck by more tragedy when Lynn's husband Russell passed away and her mother's health began to fail.
Lynn was, you know, kind of helping her out around the house, although I think it got to be a little too much for her, and that's how Elizabeth came in the picture.
Elizabeth lived across the street, and they said she was, you know, very good to Wanda, taking care of Wanda.
Lynn was like, Wanda needs more support. I can't really lift her. And Elizabeth was a strong person, so it seemed to be a good fit.
4 years later, in 2020, Wanda passed away when Lynn was 69 years old, which is when her problems with alcohol seemed to begin.
Lynn was having a really rough time. When Wanda passed, it was really hard for her. She's lost her husband, now she's lost her mother. It was tough.
When Lynn visited Kristen and her daughter in Florida that November, it became clear how bad things had gotten.
Something wakes me up at 4:45 in the morning, and I'm hearing music out on the pool deck, and I'm like, what is going on? So I open up the door, and it's Lynn, and she is, well, she's having fun. She starts walking up the stairs of the pool deck to try to come talk to me. Well, she loses her balance, and she falls. She fell over the planter, smacked her head on the pool deck, bleeding, and she's unconscious. I'm talking to 911, I'm trying to compress on her head, and they come get her. Doctor says, look, you had a brain bleed. She needed to be on supervision because she could get dizzy. She had a concussion.
When Lynn returned to North Carolina, Elizabeth Carserino moved into the house to care for her full-time in exchange for room and board.
Elizabeth understood the situation. Lynn was buying all the food, provided a house over her head. The next 6 months, Lynn was healing. She'd go to bed at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, try to sleep through what would be her drinking time. So she wouldn't do that anymore. And she got clean. When she got the all clear, I had been looking at river cruises. You know, go see new things and enjoy your life, live a little. Lynn was excited.
But now, it's been over 1 month since Kristen has heard from her mother-in-law, Lynn Keene, and North Carolina police are on their way to the house to check on her.
Myself and 3 other detectives, we loaded up in 2 different cars and rode out to Linville Falls. Jhene, Lynn's sister-in-law, had told me that there shouldn't be anybody at the home. Elizabeth had already informed them that Lynn told her to move out. I went up there, knocked and announced several times, found that the door knob, it was locked. The curtains were closed. I was told that there was a Lincoln Town car that Lynn drives, and it was not in the driveway. There was some building materials for the wheelchair ramp that was under construction. Wood and some bags of what is called concrete mix. Nothing appeared like there had been a breaking and entering or any kind of violent crime. This looked like a home that somebody was actively living in, that they just weren't home at that time. And I saw no reason to go inside the house. Because of her health issues and the fact that the family hasn't heard from her, I went back to the office and have her entered as a missing, endangered person.
Detective Austin also reaches out to Lynn's caretaker, Elizabeth Carserino.
I called at least 2 times trying to get in touch with Elizabeth and only got voicemail. I left my name and number and information that I needed to talk to her. She may be the last person to see Lynn. I also have 2 unknown friends, a Karen and an unknown male, and Lynn took off to Louisiana, so I'm beginning to get worried. Could something have happened to them?
Coming up, the search for Lynn Keene raises new concerns.
We were all upset with Lynn, disappointed in the fact that she fell off the wagon.
And detectives find answers buried in the dark.
I'm following my nose, and the smell of something decomposing is getting stronger the further I go.
Are you saying I did this?
I'm saying you know about it.
70-year-old Lynn Keene hasn't been heard from in over a month, and North Carolina police are unable to reach her caretaker, Elizabeth Carserino. Detectives call Lynn's daughter-in-law, Kristen Keene, to ask if she's heard from Elizabeth. She tells them Elizabeth moved out after Lynn left town.
Elizabeth Carserino had been in contact for probably a month with Kristen Keene, but Elizabeth had not contacted law enforcement. She tells Kristen, hey, I'm not at the house anymore. I'm camping with my son up in Maggie Valley.
Elizabeth said, I'll try to reach back out when I have signal, but I'm not going to be always available. Elizabeth told me some of Lynn's barfly friends from Louisiana had popped in. They brought in alcohol, and Elizabeth said, well, I tried to tell her Lynn's not drinking anymore, and she wouldn't listen to me, and she said, I just went to bed. She goes, but the next morning when I woke up, Lynn asked me to go to the pharmacy for her and get some things. And I said, why? And she said, because I'm going to Louisiana.
She didn't know who these people were. It kind of heightened how she was feeling about it.
We were all upset with Lynn, disappointed in the fact that she fell off the wagon, and she had done so well. I even left her some messages like, Lynn, honey, I really need to talk to you to make sure you're okay. At that stage in her life, it was a lot for her to take off and just go somewhere. And we're like, what in the world is going on? None of this makes sense.
Due to the fact that Lynn mentioned traveling to Louisiana, detectives put out a bolo for her vehicle along the route from North Carolina.
On August 2nd, I was notified by the Cherokee Police Department that the car was found in Cherokee, North Carolina. They had that vehicle towed to their secure lot. They found the keys to the vehicle under the driver's seat. There was nobody in the vehicle. Nothing stood out to them other than there was a Wells Fargo bank card in the car that was in the name of Lynn Keene. There was a Social Security card as well underneath the driver's seat, that Social Security card belonging to Lynn Keene. Bank records showed that her card had been used in Marion, North Carolina, and had been used in Cherokee, North Carolina, both times to fill up for gas at 2 different gas stations. It is starting to worry me because most people would not just leave their bank card, their Social Security card, as well as their car keys all locked up inside their vehicle.
Further analysis of the traffic recordings reveals another clue.
The Cherokee Tribal Police were able to find video of Lynn's car coming through town, and it appeared to be just occupied by one person, but the video was very grainy and couldn't make it out exactly who it was. The person driving the vehicle didn't look like Lynn. They looked like a bigger body type. What's going on in my mind is, if Lynn's not there, where did she go? Where did the people go that were with Lynn?
Police had not conducted a search of Lynn's house during their initial wellness check, but now they believe there is cause to do so.
Based on this, I did apply for a search warrant. In the interim, I've received a call from Kristen that she actually had a friend go into the home.
I had a friend that was a former detective in Tennessee. I called them up. I said, find a way in. I don't care. He went in the house. He said it reeked of incense. And there was, a couple items that looked like somebody had just been there. He goes, when I went down into the basement, there were just a ton of flies. When he said flies, I just felt so sick to my stomach.
4 days after Lynn Keene was reported missing, her daughter-in-law, Kristen Keene, is informing investigators about the new concerning details in Lynn's home. But the call is interrupted by Lynn's caretaker.
Kristen told me she was getting a call waiting from Elizabeth. So I said, take the call me back, let me know what she says. Shortly after that, Kristen calls me back and tells me that Elizabeth is very angry with her.
She got really angry at me because she felt I was accusing her of doing something to Lynn. I told her, Elizabeth, I said, not for nothing. You are the last person to see Lynn alive as we know it, because nobody's seen her since. You're going to be the first person that the police want to talk to.
Kristen says that it's just very unlike Elizabeth the way she was acting. She was acting guilty of something. What's going on in my head is I need to find Elizabeth. I need to speak with her because her story of what she has told the family is not adding up.
As their calls to Elizabeth Carserino continue to go unanswered, detectives return to Lynn's home with a search warrant.
There was nothing visual to the naked eye. I mean, everything appeared to be very tidy. There was no indicators that any kind of struggle or anything had taken place in that house.
I check the main floor of the home, and then I see a doorway that I don't know where it goes. Well, I open this door, and immediately I'm hit with a very strong odor of something dead. There's also very large flies. And so I start making my way down the stairs of this home. Flies are everywhere. And the smell of something decomposing is getting stronger the further I go. I walk into this back room, and off in the corner I see a pile of something covered with a tarp and a box sitting on top of it. I remove the box, set it off the side, and I pull the tarp back. What I see is something, it looks like a big mound of concrete. And sitting on top of it is a bag of pre-mixed concrete mix. And the smell is just overwhelming. And I can see mixed on the edges of the concrete what looks like a human shoulder, hair. I've got a crime scene. I don't know who's in the concrete. I think it's Lynn. I immediately call for assistance from other investigators. I request the assistance of the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, and I start taping off the area.
The North Carolina Bureau of Investigation sends Special Agent Maggie Holder to the crime scene. Her first challenge is how to remove the body for identification.
I was a little intimidated trying to figure out, what's the best way to do this and preserve the body to make sure that we can send the body to autopsy.
They start chiseling away at the concrete. They proved it was a human being. Could not see a face. I could see parts of arms. I could see the thighs, parts of the calf. Very decomposed. Around the neck, I can see a belt that is tight, as in this person's been strangled.
While it's clear a murder has been committed, there is little else in the home to explain how or when it happened.
Initially, on the first crime scene search, it was not apparent that there was any blood or anything.
After investigators leave the scene, they call Lynn's loved ones. They are devastated when they learn of the discovery.
I kind of had already tried to prepare myself for the worst. I was sitting on the couch with my daughter in the living room, and Tim Austin called. He said, "Kristen, I'm certain that's her in the basement. Of course, we have to do autopsy and everything, but based on her hair, it's her."
Lynn and I were so close that it just absolutely broke my heart when I heard what had happened to her.
My daughter and I just start crying, and we just start sobbing. I'm just like, you don't ever want that to be true.
And their suspicion of Elizabeth Carserino continues to grow.
Elizabeth Carserino avoided contacting law enforcement. It clearly showed that she was trying to avoid us.
The day after finding the body, Detective Austin uncovers more incriminating evidence.
I was able to find in Marion, North Carolina, that the store where the gas was purchased did have video.
When he reviews the footage from July 29th, a month after Lynn was last seen, he spots a familiar face.
It was not Lynn. In the video, Elizabeth is coming to the store, driving Lynn's car, pulling into the gas pumps, using a card to get gas. And in my head, I'm putting it together that Elizabeth's supposed to be in Maggie Valley. All of Lynn's stuff is found in Cherokee, and we're talking about two areas that are less than 30 minutes apart. I've got Elizabeth driving Lynn's car, and I've got Elizabeth using Lynn's bank card. We had nothing saying that Lynn ever gave her permission to use this. So I went before a magistrate who issued a warrant for Elizabeth Carserino's arrest. It started going through my mind of how could Lynn have been taken to the basement? Could one person have carried her, or is there somebody else involved? I needed those questions answered.
From there, I began working on a phone order in order to get up on Elizabeth Carserino's cell phone to see where she was in real time. And so at that point, I knew we had to find Elizabeth fast.
North Carolina investigators have collected evidence suggesting Elizabeth Carserino murdered her former patient, Lynn Keene. While the search for Elizabeth continues, detectives take a closer look at her background.
Elizabeth Catherine Carserino, born August 6, 1968. Her parents were Mary and Carl Smith, and she did have a brother named Johnny. She was raised in Goose Creek, South Carolina, just outside Charleston.
We did find out that she had spent some time in Utahville, South Carolina. She did have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. And one of her sons she had just reconnected with and was trying to forge a relationship. The other son was incarcerated, and the daughter did not have anything to do with her. Elizabeth Carserino had no type of medical training. She was basically just a layman caretaker.
I think that her friendship with Wanda was kind, and so she wanted to help and just said she could be the caretaker. Elizabeth was kind enough, but she was definitely a very direct person. She seemed a little nervous around me.
The only times that in her criminal history that she had any type of trouble was writing bad checks. She had been charged with several.
Nothing in Elizabeth's record indicates she would be capable of committing such a gruesome crime. So investigators focus on tracking her down for questioning.
She said that she was traveling with her son and camping in Maggie Valley with him. And we needed to make sure that Elizabeth's son had nothing to do with Lynn going missing. And we were able to determine that he lives in Georgia.
When agents with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation interview Elizabeth's son, he claims to know nothing about Lynn's murder.
We got up on the phone line. His phone never left the state of Georgia, and he was also very cooperative throughout the investigation.
Detectives conclude Elizabeth's son had nothing to do with Lynn's murder and rule him out as a potential suspect. He informs detectives he last saw his mother less than a year ago.
It was determined that he really didn't have a lot to do with her.
On August 5th, 2 days after the body was removed from Lynn Keene's house, the medical examiner conducts an autopsy.
Dental records were provided which belonged to Lynn Keene and were matched to the body to confirm that that was in fact Lynn.
According to the pathologist, preliminary cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head and ligature strangulation, and it would be in that order. She was struck with some object in the head, causing a big head injury, but did not kill her. Ligature strangulation came second, and that is what killed her.
Investigators now have a positive identification, cause of death, and a prime suspect, but they are no closer to bringing her in.
We were able to find a couple of photographs of Elizabeth. We put this out that she was wanted.
On August 6th, they discover why Elizabeth has been so difficult to track down.
There was a nurse at a hospital that actually saw the picture of Elizabeth and recognized her as a patient of hers that was currently in the hospital.
Detectives are informed that Elizabeth was admitted 2 days earlier on August 4th.
It was relayed to me through Cherokee Tribal Police that she was in a campground staying in a tent in Cherokee, North Carolina, which was actually only a few hundred yards from where the car was abandoned.
She had left the vehicle and walked on foot to a campground and had been camping in a tent. She took some Tylenol PM and slit her wrist trying to take her own life. To me, that is showing that she's feeling very guilty for something, but definitely something traumatic has happened.
Local law enforcement in Silva were able to arrest Elizabeth at the medical facility where she was transferred from their custody to the Avery County Sheriff's Office.
Your first thought is, okay, I've got to get this person to talk to me. This was just such an egregious way to murder someone, and I just wanted to know what happened.
Coming up, police confront Elizabeth about what exactly happened to Lynn Keene.
What did she do to you to get you over that breaking?
I don't know what to say to you.
She tried to use the old amnesia thing. I think she was distancing herself from the crime.
And Lynn's loved ones seek justice for her terrifying murder.
And we're both trying to play back this whole thing in our head. Like, how could we have missed that?
On August 7th, 4 days after the body of Lynn Keene was found in her basement, investigators questioned the suspected killer, Elizabeth Carserino.
My goal at the time was to establish a rapport to get her to open up to talk to us. And then to be able to use those facts that she gives me to establish a motive.
When was the last time you talked with Miss Lynn?
The last time I spoke to her, she was supposedly in Louisiana. She was coming back with some friends. Don't know who the people are. Only know what the one girl's first name is.
Well, I got some information I want to share with you.
Okay.
Lynn is dead.
Don't tell me that.
Oh, yeah.
And whenever he tells her that, she puts her hands over her face and just, acts really surprised and starts sort of crying.
While Elizabeth appears saddened by the news of Lynn's death, she says caring for the woman had been a challenge.
I was constantly cleaning up everything. Of course, she didn't remember that because she was drunk. She yelled at me and told me that she might as well pay somebody to clean the house because I don't do a damn thing to sit on my ass. And that pissed me off to no end because I did absolutely everything. I went and bought all the groceries. I put everything up. I did all the cooking. I did all the cleaning. I did all the laundry. I even put her clothes up for her.
And nothing was never good enough.
When she got to that point, no, it wasn't.
What did she do to you to get you over that breaking?
Are you saying I did this?
I'm saying you know about it.
I don't know what to say to you if I can't remember right this moment. I don't know what to say.
You want to go take a walk?
Sure.
After a break for Elizabeth to regain her composure, investigators try questioning her again.
We know you're human. We're human. We make mistakes. But we do have a job to do.
I do understand.
You did this. You killed Lynn and you left her in that house.
And it went back and forth that she just couldn't remember the details and what had happened. So then there come a point in time within the interview that I kind of changed my role and got more aggressive with her.
You got tired of her and you killed her. Did you not kill her? Look at me. Look at me and be honest with me.
I am being honest.
You killed her, didn't you?
Yes, I killed her. I can't get it out of my head.
That's right.
I can't get it out what I did.
Elizabeth refuses to go into detail, but her actions after leaving Lynn's house show investigators she went to great lengths attempting to cover it up.
Elizabeth is smart and knew to call Kristen multiple times and put her on a different trail, like Karen in Louisiana going down with friends. She knew to bring up that she went to Maggie Valley with her son She thought, hey, you know, I'm gonna have time to get my story straight.
As for motive, they believe the growing tension between the two women finally became too much for Elizabeth to take.
According to Elizabeth Carserino, Lynn was very restricted about where she could go, what she could do, that it was pretty much she had to be 24/7 with Lynn. And I believe that over a period of time that anger and resentment and rage built up, and I think that maybe on this particular day, I think that Elizabeth lost her temper.
She snaps on her and hits her over the head. Instead of calling 911 of, oh God, I've messed up, I've hurt her, let's get her some help. She put a belt around her neck and took her life. I spoke with the district attorney, and he felt it appropriate to go ahead and have a warrant issued for Elizabeth for the crime of murder.
So you've got them in custody. So there is some highs, there is still some lows, because you still got a lot of work to do. This case has got to be presented in a court of law, and you're trying to make sure everything is tied up to where that this is going to be a winnable case.
After a week of investigation, Elizabeth Carserino is arrested and charged with the murder of 70-year-old Lynn Keene.
They called us right away, and it was like, you know, we got her. We got her. I'm crying like a baby, and Lynn's brother, just devastated. First he lost his mom, and now his sister, so horribly, you know, and Janelle too, and we're both trying to play back this whole thing in our head, like, how could we have missed that?
Like investigators, Lynn's loved ones are frustrated by Elizabeth's refusal to explain the whole truth.
She claims to have had amnesia, can't remember anything. BS. I call BS. She's lying, lying, lying.
The family's resentment is intensified by the amount of time it takes to bring Elizabeth to justice.
Elizabeth's attorney died, and so we had to wait. I mean, it took 2.5 years to even get to trial.
In January 2024, the long-awaited day finally comes.
I was there for that day. I was sitting in the front row, and in walks Elizabeth right through the door. She looks at me and then quickly looks away. Looks could kill.
I was told she had an option, plead guilty. It would be easier, and she might get less time.
Rather than go to trial, Elizabeth decides to plead guilty. At her sentencing hearing, prosecutors present new evidence for the court to take into consideration.
The crime scene agent who initially processed the scene on August 3rd, he returned and performed something called Blue Star. Blue Star is like luminol, basically a liquid chemical mixture that we use to look for blood that has either been cleaned up or there's small amounts of blood that can't be seen with the naked eye. Sprayed it within the master bedroom area, and it fluoresced quite a bit on the floor, on the bed, and in different areas within the residence. And that indicated to us that that is in fact probably where the initial assault occurred, and then likely murder there.
Prosecutors believe Elizabeth used the belt to drag Lynn down to the basement, where she used the bags of concrete to attempt to hide the body.
She's telling the family these stories that some friends and Lynn took off to Louisiana and Elizabeth packs everything she can. She goes to the store and buys several things using Lynn's bank card, and she goes on the run.
To kill this woman that you had taken care of, and for the next month, lie to her family while her body is decomposing in the basement. It's pretty sick.
Lynn's loved ones add personal statements requesting Elizabeth receive the maximum sentence under the law.
My impact statement was mostly to let everybody know who Lynn was and how wonderful she was. None of us are perfect, but her heart and her soul, she was a wonderful person. She was caring, she was giving, she was kind. I wanted them to know about her. And the last part of my impact statement was directed mostly towards Elizabeth and that she was lying, how evil she was. How could you live in a house where you murdered someone and they're rotting downstairs in the basement below you for almost 2 months? It's insane to me.
On January the 5th, 2024, Elizabeth Carserino was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
I'm a spiritual person. Like, I talk to Lynn every day. There is not a day that goes by that I don't think about her. Kind of like my husband, you know. I might not see them, but they're still here with me in spirit. Lynn was just a fun-loving, free spirit. She was kind. She was generous. I mean, in this day and age, when a lot of people have forgotten what kindness is, I mean, yeah, it's a loss. She never met a stranger.
To Leah, $400 a month for rent. It doesn't seem like enough to kill someone and to carry out such a vicious and just almost depraved act of chopping them up and then discarding their body parts. On the surface, the immediate financial dispute over rent might indeed seem disproportionate to such a horrific act of violence. However, the prosecution effectively countered this by arguing that the true motive transcended mere money. It was a deeply personal, volatile act driven by exposed secrets and searing humiliation. The prosecution argues that it was a crime of passion. This wasn't about the monetary value of rent. It was about the public exposure of Leah's carefully constructed lies and personal deceptions. Chanel brought up that Leah was being unfaithful to her husband, and she brought this up in front of Leah's husband. This act of outing Leah's infidelity, compounded by the earlier revelation of her fraudulent landlord scheme, constituted a profound violation of Leah's perceived control and her public image. The real reason that she snapped was because Chanel outed her. The shame, the humiliation, and the loss of face in front of her own husband would have been an intolerable blow to Leah's narcissistic ego. It shamed her and infuriated her, and she took that out on Chanel when she had the next opportunity to. The extreme nature of the violence further supported the crime of passion theory. It is one thing to, in the heat of the moment, to maybe stab somebody, but 39 times is crazy. This level of overkill, a frenzied assault, spoke to profound, uncontrolled rage rather than a simple desire to silence a victim. The prosecution then meticulously laid out how Leah had methodically disposed of Chanel's body, utilizing every resource at her disposal, regardless of the ethical or moral implications. Prosecutors say Leah used both acquaintances and public transportation to distribute the dismembered body parts in various locations. This brazen act, risking discovery on crowded public transport, highlighted Leah's audacity and her conviction that she could outwit the system. The image itself was chilling to ponder for the jury. Think about if you were sitting next to her on the train. This direct, rhetorical question forced jurors to vividly imagine the perpetrator, composed and unconcerned, transporting the remains of her victim in their very midst. The act of dismemberment and subsequent dispersal was painted as the ultimate expression of evil. It takes a whole other level of evilness to dismember a body, and then to discard the body parts. This was not merely about avoiding capture. It was about erasing, destroying, dehumanizing in the most profound way possible. In stark contrast, the defense attempted to cast doubt on the prosecution's damning narrative. Grasping at any straw to create reasonable doubt, the defense attempted to undermine the prosecution's argument. Their strategy often involved attempting to reframe the circumstances, offering alternative, albeit highly improbable, explanations for Leah's movements. Maybe she wasn't on the train to dismember, to distribute body parts. Maybe she was going to the mall. Maybe she had a friend in Hempstead. These suggested alternatives, while technically plausible in a vacuum, completely dissolve when confronted with a mountain of circumstantial evidence pointing directly to her guilt. The absurdity of these claims was not lost on observers. I know defense lawyers got their job to do. You got to defend the indefensible. But my God, it was preposterous to say the least. The starkness of this assessment underscored the overwhelming nature of the evidence against Leah, leaving very little room for any alternative, innocent interpretation of her actions. The meticulous work of the detectives, the powerful forensic evidence, and the consistent witness testimony had woven an airtight case, leaving the defense with little to work with but incredulity. On December 15th, after considering the compelling evidence presented by the prosecution and weighing the implausible arguments of the defense, the jury rendered its verdict. On December 15th, the jury finds Leah Cuevas guilty. The pronouncement of guilty was not just a legal conclusion. It was a resounding affirmation of justice for Chanel Thompson Brown and her grieving family, an end to the agonizing uncertainty that had plagued them. The courtroom, a crucible of truth and consequence, bore witness to this pivotal moment. During the subsequent sentencing hearing, Leah Cuevas, having remained silent throughout the trial, finally took the stand, not in a display of remorse, but in a final, defiant act of self-pity and victimhood. During the sentencing hearing, she finally takes a stand. Her words, rather than offering apology or contrition, served only to underscore her continued delusion and lack of empathy. She showed no remorse. She basically was saying that we set her up. This complete denial of responsibility, her attempt to cast herself as the victim of a conspiracy, spoke to an unyielding narcissistic personality, unable to confront the reality of her own heinous actions. She told the judge that she felt like a lamb being led to slaughter. This profound misappropriation of a term commonly used to describe an innocent victim was a final, chilling testament to her detachment from the horrific suffering she had inflicted. The presiding judge, a figure of measured justice, met Leah's final tirade with a powerful and poignant rebuke, ensuring that the true victim's voice was heard. Once she finished her mini tirade, the judge said to Leah, the only lamb being led to slaughter in this case was Chanel. This sharp, moral clarity, delivered from the bench, firmly repositioned the narrative, cutting through Leah's self-serving rhetoric to highlight the actual injustice. It was a moment of profound judicial courage, restoring dignity to Chanel and delivering a powerful, uncompromising message of accountability. The sentence delivered reflected the extreme nature of Leah's crimes. And then he sentenced her to 25 years to life. This indeterminate sentence ensured that Leah would spend a substantial portion, if not the remainder, of her life incarcerated, a consequence commensurate with the immense suffering she inflicted. The collective sigh of relief, often unspoken but palpable, rippled through the courtroom and beyond. She got every year that she deserves. She is sitting where she is right now because there's evidence of justice in this world. This conviction was not just about punishment. It was about the reaffirmation of societal values, the belief that even the most heinous acts will eventually face reckoning. The reflections on the case by those who had grappled with its grim realities often returned to the incomprehensible nature of Leah's actions. It's unfathomable to think that somebody would be capable of doing what she did. The sheer scale of the brutality, the dismemberment, and the cold disposal defied conventional human understanding, pushing the boundaries of what most believe possible for another person to inflict. The stark conclusion, drawn with weary certainty, was unequivocal. It was just pure, unadulterated evil. I mean, if you didn't think that evil exists as epitomized it, this epithet, pure, unadulterated evil, a rarely used descriptor in the clinical language of crime, underscores a profound sense of malevolence that permeated Leah Cuevas's actions, suggesting a depravity beyond simple explanation. Yet, beyond the horrifying details and the chilling analysis of evil, this story is ultimately a profound human tragedy, centered on the hopes and dreams of a remarkable woman. This story, when you really think about it, it's a woman who came to America in search of the American dream for her children and her husband. Chanel Thompson Brown embodied the aspirations of countless immigrants. Her life a testament to perseverance and unwavering family devotion. Her untimely death left an unbearable void. And in the end, now we have 4 children left without a mother. This profound loss, visited upon innocent children, is the ultimate testament to the cruelty of the perpetrator. It is a harsh reminder that every act of violence has ripple effects that devastate lives far beyond the immediate victim. To truly honor Chanel, it was vital to remember her beyond the gruesome headlines. She was more than this case, more than the gruesomeness that makes this case sensational. She was a loving, caring mother and wife, sister, aunt, human being. This reminder serves as a powerful call to empathy, ensuring that the victim's humanity, her essence as a person, is not eclipsed by the darkness of crime. Her children, embodying her spirit and continuing her legacy, serve as living proof of her enduring impact. Me doing my schoolwork and following something that I want to do and I'm passionate about is something that she would have been proud of. The quiet determination of her daughter, mirroring Chanel's own aspirations, is a poignant tribute. The joy of future milestones, tragically denied to Chanel, still holds profound meaning for her family. I feel like seeing the twins grow up is something that Mama would have wanted to see. The achievements and growth of her children continue to be a source of pride and love for her. Family. She loved her children, and I know she would be very proud of them and their achievements. Yes, she was a beautiful soul. These heartfelt reflections affirm Chanel's vibrant life, ensuring that her memory is honored not by the violence she suffered, but by the love she shared and the legacy she left behind. In this way, good truly triumphs over evil, as the spirit of Chanel lives on the hearts of those who loved her, a testament to enduring humanity even in the face of profound cruelty. And the relentless efforts of law enforcement to bring Leah Cuevas to justice serve as a testament that, even when evil seems absolute, the pursuit of truth and the unwavering demand for accountability will always prevail. The lessons from this case resonate deeply, underscoring the critical need for vigilance, community awareness, and an unshakable faith in the justice system protect the innocent and ensure that those who inflict such pain are held to account, ultimately inspiring the triumph of good over the very darkest shadows of human nature. The world saw the depravity of Leah Cuevas, but it also saw the tireless dedication of the investigators, the unwavering commitment of prosecutors, and the essential humanity of a victim remembered not for her suffering, but for profound love and aspirations that defined her too short life. Model 5:48 p.m. Thinking thoughts. Auto. Expand to view model thoughts. Chevron under strike. As a seasoned criminal psychology analyst and, perhaps, a chronicler of the darker facets of the human condition through my detective novels, I've delved into countless narratives of crime and punishment. Yet, there are some cases that resonate with chilling clarity, painting a stark portrait of an individual's capacity for unimaginable cruelty. This is one such case. A story that intertwines a hopeful pursuit of an American dream with a nightmare of betrayal and violence, ultimately illuminating the unwavering dedication of those who champion justice. It is a narrative that tests our very understanding of malice, yet, in its unfolding, showcases a profound, relentless commitment of those who serve the cause of righteousness, ensuring that even in the face of depravity, human goodness will always strive for an ultimate, meaningful triumph. The incident began to unfold with a declaration that instantly grabs at the core of human empathy. A horrific murder terrifies a community in New York. It wasn't merely a localized fear, a whispered apprehension within a small geographic pocket, but a creeping dread that spread through the very fabric of society, shaking the residents of a vibrant, bustling community to their collective core. The initial reports, disseminated through various media channels with an urgency reflecting the gravity of the situation, painted a picture so grisly, so utterly devoid of compassion and humanity, that it sent profound shivers down the spines of even the most hardened veterans of law enforcement, individuals accustomed to confronting the grotesque underbelly of society. For those of us who have borne witness to the myriad forms of human malevolence, the scene described in those early dispatches carried a unique and particularly heavy weight, a sense of visceral revulsion that transcended the purely professional. One detective, in particular, a man whose voice carried the deep timbre of experience and the weariness of too many dark sights, conveyed a profound and personal impact of the discovery, stating, "I'd never seen anything as gruesome as this, the way the body was hacked up. This was not merely a murder, a clinical termination of life. It was an act designed to dehumanize, to obliterate identity, to sever not just physical connections, but spiritual ones as well. A deliberate desecration intended to destroy even the memory of a human form. The sheer, savage brutality inherent in such an act screams volumes about the perpetrator's profoundly disturbed state of mind, revealing a chilling and almost pathological detachment from the common bonds of humanity. It loudly proclaims a desire not just to end a life, but to utterly desecrate it, to render it unrecognizable, an object to be scattered and forgotten. This precise level of gratuitous violence often indicates a profoundly personal attack, driven by a tempest of uncontrollable rage or a calculated effort to conceal an initial, devastating absence of critical identifiers presented a formidable and disheartening challenge to the dedicated investigators tasked with unraveling this ghastly, perplexing mystery. The first crucial hurdles in any homicide investigation revolve, almost universally, around the delicate yet immensely important task of identification. Without knowing who the victim is, without giving a name and a narrative back to the voiceless, the entire journey to finding a killer becomes immensely more difficult, akin to navigating a dense, treacherous fog without a compass, relying only on fragmented sensory input. In this particular and harrowing case, the challenges were amplified to an almost insurmountable degree by the sheer audacity and calculated nature of the perpetrator's deliberate attempts at concealment. The detectives faced a horrifying, soul-sapping void. We didn't have hands, we didn't have fingerprints, and we didn't have a head. These three critical elements, hands, for their unique identification via dermatoglyphics, the intricate patterns of fingerprints that are uniquely human, and a head, invaluable for facial recognition, dental records, and the broader context of an individual's appearance, are often the primary and most reliable avenues through which law enforcement can swiftly and definitively restore a name to the silenced. Their conspicuous absence was not, by any stretch of the imagination, accidental. It was a deliberate, cold, and calculated move by someone desperate to hide the victim's identity, thereby buying themselves precious time, or so they mistakenly and arrogantly believed, in their grotesque pursuit of evasion. This particular and profoundly disturbing act of dismemberment, specifically designed to thwart conventional forensic techniques, pointed directly to a killer with a certain degree of cunning, Perhaps one who had given some prior thought, however brief or twisted, to evading capture, or one driven by such intense, overwhelming emotion that their actions became pathologically extreme, surpassing any reasonable boundary of human behavior. It naturally begged a visceral and universally echoed question, resonating among those who first encountered the remains with a shuddering sense of incomprehension. What type of monster would do this? The word monster is often instinctively employed to describe those who commit acts so far beyond normal human comprehension that they appear to rip apart the very fabric of what we understand as acceptable or even possible for our species. It reflects a collective horror, a desperate need to categorize the perpetrator as something other, something inhuman, to distance ourselves, however futilely, from the terrifying thought that such profound depravity could truly exist within a human form, walking among us undetected. Yet, as the initial, profound shock began to subside and the meticulous, painstaking work of scene processing commenced, a more disturbing and deeply unsettling layer of recognition began to settle over the veteran, investigative team. The unsettling nature of the crime, the method of the body's dismemberment, and the distinct geographical patterns of its initial discovery, all of these nuanced yet chilling details contributed to a daunting, terrifying familiarity. Investigators quickly realized the details of the crime are disturbingly familiar. This feeling of criminal déjà vu was not born of idle speculation or the imaginative projections of tired minds. It was a chilling echo of past traumas, a ghost from an unclosed, haunting chapter in the region's relatively recent criminal history, only a few years prior. The geographically diverse yet psychologically interconnected communities of Long Island had been gripped by a series of horrific and similarly gruesome discoveries, leaving behind a profound and festering scar on the public consciousness and an unsolved mystery that continued, like a cold mist, to haunt the very corridors of justice. We did have a serial killer that had dumped numerous bodies on Long Island. The phrase itself, uttered with a grave and knowing solemnity by an investigator, spoke volumes about the existing and simmering pressures on law enforcement and the pervasive, underlying anxiety within the affected communities. The Gilgo Beach murders, as they came to be infamously known, involved a disturbing pattern of dismembered human remains being found in secluded areas, a pattern that, for a brief, terrifying moment, appeared to be grotesquely replaying itself. A macabre and unwelcome encore. The chilling possibility that this new, equally gruesome discovery could somehow be directly linked to an ongoing, unidentified serial perpetrator created a palpable tension, an almost suffocating fear that perhaps the original monster had chillingly returned, or, almost equally as terrifying, that a new one had emerged, meticulously mimicking the ghastly style and signature of the old. The immediate and paramount imperative, therefore, was to determine with absolute certainty if this horrific new event was indeed a continuation of an old nightmare, dragging the community back into its unholy grasp, or a terrifyingly fresh one entirely, presenting an unknown new menace. The chilling connection to the infamous Gilgo Beach cases wasn't just a general, amorphous unease. It was tragically reinforced by new, grim discoveries that began to emerge in disturbing and geographically unsettling proximity. As if orchestrated by a malevolent, unseen hand, more human remains were found, further deepening the mystery and intensifying the public's widespread fear, transforming general anxiety into a tangible, creeping dread. The first alarming find was relayed with an unsettling, almost disarming casualness by an anonymous homeowner, whose morning routine was shattered in an instant. That person found an arm in his hedges in his front yard. Imagine, if you will, the sheer, mind-numbing horror of a tranquil morning stroll, a routine tending of one's beloved property, perhaps admiring blooming hydrangeas or trimming unruly shrubs, only to suddenly stumble upon a dismembered human limb, nestled obscenely among the greenery. It's a surreal nightmare scenario that forces an immediate, brutal confrontation with ultimate depravity, tearing apart the mundane fabric of everyday life. The profound shock of such a discovery can, without question, permanently alter one's sense of security, irrevocably transforming familiar surroundings, once sources of comfort, into places of unimaginable terror. The following day, with a cruel and agonizing precision, a dreadful pattern found terrifying confirmation, escalating the horror. The next day, another arm is found about a half a mile away. The sequential discovery of body parts, scattered deliberately as if on a macabre scavenger hunt orchestrated by a malevolent force, heightened the collective anxiety to an almost unbearable degree. People were very nervous. Indeed, nervous felt like a gross and utterly inadequate understatement. Communities were gripped by profound and pervasive unease, a suffocating sense of vulnerability that seeped into every aspect of daily life. Children were instinctively kept indoors, their once carefree outdoor play replaced by hush warnings, and familiar paths through once inviting wooded areas or local parks were suddenly fraught with unspoken dread, every passing stranger becoming, for a fleeting and terrifying moment, a source of unsettling suspicion. The methodical scattering of remains, rather than a desperate single disposal, suggested a chilling and calculated deliberateness, forcing the investigators into a grim and agonizing game of pursuit. As one detective aptly summarized, a stark truth settling over the scene like a pall, heavy and suffocating. We're basically following a trail of body parts. This was not just a metaphorical trail, a conceptual path to understanding, but a literal, agonizing sequence of grotesque discoveries, each one a stark testament to a heinous crime, each one demanding a precise, methodical, and emotionally taxing response from those sworn to protect. The search was no longer just about identifying a single crime location, but about painstakingly piecing together a vast and intricate geographical puzzle of death and desecration, praying that the next piece would bring them closer to the perpetrator. As detectives delved ever deeper into the macabre tableau, pursuing every faint lead and sifting through the layers of deception and denial, they began to glimpse, however dimly at first, the dark and twisted heart of the killer's motive. What emerged, chillingly, was a narrative steeped in profound desperation and cold-blooded ruthlessness, far beyond the reach of typical human understanding. When detectives unravel the mystery, they find a killer who'd do anything to protect her secrets. The concept of secrets in such a horrific context isn't trivial or mundane. It refers, rather, to the profound, potentially life-altering truths that individuals guard with an almost fierce, animalistic tenacity, often resorting to extreme and unconscionable measures when those cherished secrets are threatened, with exposure. In this particular and egregious case, that inherent protective instinct, twisted by malignant narcissism, had metastasized into something truly monstrous, suggesting a calculated and utterly chilling decision to silence someone forever rather than face. Exposure, public shame, or the unavoidable consequences of illicit actions. The profound irony of attempting to hide one's secret, however dire, through an act that would undoubtedly expose the perpetrator to an even greater and more damning truth, that of their own inherent depravity and monstrous capability, was certainly not lost on the seasoned and world-weary investigators. The sheer, unfathomable lengths to which this individual went, driven by the perceived, overwhelming threat of revelation, speaks volumes about a deeply pathological fear of judgment, loss of control, or profound social standing. The criminal's psyche, when truly cornered and feeling its manufactured reality crumbling, can, as history relentlessly shows us, exhibit astonishingly brutal and self-preserving instincts, warping moral boundaries to justify even the most heinous acts in the name of self-preservation, however misguided, extreme, or ultimately self-defeating those actions might prove to be. This underlying and deeply disturbing pathology was later, and with sickening clarity, starkly illustrated by a chilling, casual comment revealing a mind completely unmoored from the societal expectations of empathy, compassion, and basic human decency. A conversation, recounted by a brave and traumatized witness, unveiled the killer's terrifying inner landscape, a stark vista devoid of normal moral inhibitions. She's like, she doesn't know that I will chop her up and feed her to the dogs. The casual, almost whimsical nature of this statement, delivered perhaps with a dismissive wave of the hand, an imperious shrug, or a cold, vacant stare, is, as any analyst will attest, far more terrifying than a scream of rage or furious, unthinking threat. It embodies a premeditated, almost whimsical, and chillingly confident capacity for violence. A terrifying prophecy of the horror that would soon, with meticulous and gruesome precision, unfold. The grotesque inclusion of feeding the remains to dogs suggests an utter and absolute dehumanization of the victim, a desire not merely to end a life, but to eradicate any trace of its precious existence, to treat it as nothing more than refuse, an object to be consumed and forever forgotten, erased from the world. This specific statement, crucially uttered before the crime had even been committed, reveals a distinct and terrifying absence of moral inhibition, a complete and total divorce from the sanctity of human life that underpins our civilization. It's the chilling, resonant voice of a predator, articulating its grotesque intentions with horrifying clarity, a grotesque and undeniable foreshadowing of a future horror that would shake a community to its very foundations. And what of the horrifying, meticulous execution of this malevolent vision? The methods of disposal, discovered through painstaking police work and careful forensic analysis, continue to highlight the killer's brazen indifference, pathological lack of empathy, and almost contemptuous disregard for society. She just walked through neighborhoods tossing body parts. This act, so profoundly disrespectful to the deceased, so carelessly dismissive of human remains, so utterly contemptuous of public spaces, speaks to a profound psychological vacancy, a gaping moral chasm. It is not, it must be noted, the frenzied, desperate disposal of someone overwhelmed by panic and remorse, but rather the cold, methodical, almost casual scattering indicative of someone completely detached from the immense moral weight of their actions, to casually discard human remains in public areas, in spaces where ordinary people live, work, and raise their families, demonstrates an almost contemptuous disregard for society itself, for its norms, its cherished laws, and its fundamental sensitivities. It hints at an individual who views themselves as entirely separate from the common rules and moral boundaries that govern the rest of humanity, an inflated ego that, in its pathological grandiosity, believes it is fundamentally above any form of accountability or retribution. The sheer audacity of it all, coupled inextricably with the underlying malignant motivation of protecting cherished and illicit secrets, suggests a profound narcissistic streak, a chilling belief in their own unparalleled cleverness, an illusory sense of absolute invulnerability. The collective response to such an egregious and profoundly inhuman act, as voiced by those on the front lines of justice, those who must confront the raw edge of human depravity every single day, cut directly to the heart of what it means to be truly human, to possess empathy and a moral compass. That takes a void in your heart, a soul to do something like that, if you ask me. This eloquent, poignant, and profoundly human observation underscores a sheer and terrifying absence of basic human compassion. The gaping chasm where empathy, however fleeting, should reside within any functional human being. It speaks to a fundamental deficiency, a pervasive lack of the intrinsic moral compass that, mercifully, guides most individuals away from such profound and unconscionable cruelty. The acts described are not just egregiously illegal, they are, in the most chilling and undeniable sense, profoundly inhuman. The conclusion, drawn with weary certainty and the heavy weight of experience by one who has witnessed too much of humanity's darker side, summarize the horror succinctly, definitively, and without hyperbole, It was just pure, unadulterated evil. This is a statement not lightly made, especially by those who deal professionally with the complex and often twisted motivations behind crime. It signifies a point beyond which rational explanation seems utterly insufficient, a realm where malice exists not merely as a byproduct of circumstance, a consequence of profound psychological distress, or reaction to some perceived grievance, but as an inherent, self-serving, and terrifying force in its own right, a raw manifestation of evil. This, then, was the dark and harrowing tableau into which the dedicated investigators bravely stepped, prepared to face an evil that challenged their very understanding of humanity itself, yet fortified by an unshakable determination to bring its perpetrator to deserved, uncompromising justice. The arduous journey they embarked on would test their collective resolve, their ingenious methodologies, and their unwavering, profound belief in the eventual triumph of right over wrong, of light over encroaching darkness. The unfolding of this grim saga began precisely on July 8, 2014. The geographic backdrop for the initial discovery was a seemingly tranquil suburban community of Bayshore, New York. It was a day like any other, under the canopy of a hot summer sky, when two unsuspecting individuals, ordinary construction workers, went about their daily work. Two construction workers are taking a shortcut to the ferry through a wooded lot when they make a gruesome discovery. The sheer banality of the circumstance, the everyday routine abruptly interrupted by the extraordinary and grotesque horror, adds a chilling layer of surrealism to the entire event, underscoring how swiftly and brutally life can be altered. One moment, they were navigating a familiar path, perhaps casually discussing mundane work matters or future plans for weekend. The next, their world was irrevocably altered by a sight that would forever be etched into their memories, an image of absolute terror. As they navigated the undergrowth and dense foliage, their routine journey was tragically transformed into a macabre, unwanted expedition. As they were walking along the path, they came upon a female torso. The term torso itself, devoid of limbs or head, immediately signifies an act of profound and deliberate violence, clearly an intentional attempt at disidentification and concealment. It screams of a calculated effort to fragment identity, to scatter the pieces of a life, rendering them unrecognizable. The shocking specifics provided by the original report continued to highlight the egregious extent of the dismemberment, painting an agonizing picture. The body doesn't have a head, it doesn't have arms, and the legs have been removed from below the knee. This clinical and detached description, however necessary for investigative clarity, can barely convey the absolute horror and chilling audacity of the scene. The complete and systematic absence of such crucial identifying features force a uniquely challenging investigative approach, shifting initial efforts from straightforward and rapid identification to a painstaking, emotionally taxing, and complex forensic puzzle. The immediate, visceral reaction of the workers, understandable for any human being, was one of universal revulsion and an innate sense of civic responsibility. The horrified men immediately called 911. Their quick, decisive action, despite the profound psychological shock they had undoubtedly just experienced, ensured that the path to justice, however long and arduous, could begin without unnecessary delay. Homicide detectives, professionals specifically trained to respond with steely composure to the worst manifestations of human behavior, were swiftly dispatched to the scene, their uniform presence a somber, reassuring assurance that the forces of law and order were indeed engaged and would leave no stone unturned. Homicide detectives rushed to the scene, with years, often decades, of cumulative experience confronting the stark and brutal realities of violence and depravity. Even these seasoned professionals, hardened by countless tragic sights, found themselves deeply and personally affected by what they encountered, struggling to reconcile the act with any shred of human logic. One investigator's first impression, articulated with raw honesty, painted a vivid picture of initial disbelief, outrage, and profound moral indignation. My first impression when I saw the body was, what type of monster would do this? This raw, unvarnished reaction from a detective, who by definition is accustomed to grotesque sights, underscored the extraordinary and truly egregious nature of the crime, separating it from the unfortunately common but less barbaric acts of violence they routinely witness. The precise way the torso lay, its subtle orientation, and the remaining scraps of clothing, meticulously documented, provided crucial, if nascent, forensic data. The torso was almost face down, maybe leaning a little bit to its right side. It had a pair of shorts on and a bra. These small, seemingly minor details would, in the complex tapestry of the investigation, eventually become essential threads, connecting one piece of evidence to another. The indelible impact of the sight continued to weigh heavily on the investigators, reinforcing the egregious and depraved nature of the act. I've never seen anything as gruesome as this. The way the body was hacked up, there wasn't any blood around the body. The striking and crucial lack of blood at the immediate dumping site immediately suggested a crucial piece of investigative information, a definitive negative inference. This was unequivocally not where the murder itself had occurred. It decisively indicated a secondary crime scene, implying a deliberate, calculated transportation and disposal, elements that speak to a chilling level of calculation, control, and foresight from the perpetrator, rather than a panicked, impulsive act. The immediate condition of the remains further refined the crucial investigative timeline, narrowing down the window of the crime's occurrence. So, okay, looks like this body was dumped here. The body was in fairly good condition, meaning it hadn't been dumped there a long time ago. Especially, we're talking about a July day where it was 80 degrees that morning. The decomposition would go rapidly. The oppressively hot summer weather, a powerful accelerator of natural decomposition processes, suggested a relatively recent deposition of the body, offering a vital and initial temporal constraint to the inquiry. This narrowing of the timeline, even without specific dates, provided a vital framework for subsequent, targeted inquiries, helping to focus their immediate efforts. However, despite these initial, albeit promising, forensic insights, the primary and most daunting obstacle remained precisely the same: definitively identifying the victim. With only a dismembered torso, determining the victim's identity proves to be difficult. The inherent challenges were meticulously outlined by the forensic team, who understood the intricate requirements for positive identification. We didn't have hands. We could run fingerprints. We didn't have a head. So, it was very important to make sure you have everything documented well. This methodical and rigorous emphasis on thorough documentation, on preserving every minute and potentially crucial detail, regardless of its apparent insignificance at the time, reflected the demanding, almost excruciating precision required in such a complex and challenging investigation. Every fragment, however small or seemingly minor, held the potential to contain the singular key to unlocking the victim's identity or providing a crucial, undeniable link to the elusive perpetrator. This initial phase, therefore, was a profound testament to patience, an almost excruciating waiting game where every scrap of information, every fiber, every print, had to be painstakingly cataloged, meticulously analyzed, and carefully considered in the vast, terrifying puzzle that lay before them. Yet, even in the midst of overwhelming despair and the crushing weight of an unknown tragedy, small, seemingly insignificant details at the crime scene can, and often do, yield crucial, unexpected breakthroughs. As the scene technicians, trained to an almost superhuman degree of meticulousness, combed every inch of the area, an anomaly, something conspicuously out of place, caught their expert and discerning eye. Within close proximity, there were some bungee cords that seemed out of place. This specific, seemingly minor detail, The anomalous presence of an object not naturally belonging in the quiet, wooded lot immediately flagged itself as potential evidence, a piece of the puzzle that didn't fit the natural landscape. The fact that these cords were recovered with such careful precision underscored the rigorous and uncompromising nature of the scene processing, a profound testament to the unparalleled training, vast experience, and unwavering dedication of the personnel involved, who understood that no detail was too small to ignore. But the scene had more hidden secrets to reluctantly reveal. Pieces of a human being cruelly scattered. Those bungee cords were recovered, but then it was discovered that the legs were just maybe 20 feet west of the body. This harrowing new discovery, adding more grim and essential pieces to the tragic human puzzle, provided immediate and desperate hope for a definitive identification. The chilling manner in which these limbs were severed continued to emphasize the shocking brutality and raw, uncontrolled violence of the crime. They were hacked off, but crucially, and with a stroke of grim fortune for the investigators, the legs carried a distinct, highly personal mark that could potentially cut through the heavy veil of anonymity. And, like I said, on the leg you could see the tattoos. Tattoos are, by their very nature, deeply personal, often unique identifiers. Permanent marks etched onto the skin that can speak volumes about a person's life, their loves, their affiliations, and their individual identity, a silent story waiting to be told. The intricate details of these markings were quickly and precisely documented, committing them to the official record. One of them said angel, and the other one looked like a GT on the opposite leg. This was a powerful, if grim and agonizing, lead, a shining beacon in the darkness. Investigators immediately grasped the profound potential of this discovery, instinctively recognizing that these distinctive, deeply personal tattoos could bridge the agonizing gap between anonymous remains and a human being. With a name, a cherished family, and a precious, vibrant story, investigators photograph the tattoos and enlist the aid of the media to find who they belong to. The strategic and immediate decision to involve the media, leveraging the unparalleled power of public reach and broad dissemination, was a critical and expertly calculated step in the complex identification process. The sheer, terrifying visibility and deeply disturbing nature of this type of crime ensured widespread and immediate coverage across all news platforms. As you can imagine, every media outlet was covering this story, including ours. It's not every day you cover a murder like this. The public, gripped by the terror and profound mystery, was naturally primed to receive such information, eagerly scrutinizing every detail, potentially holding the singular, critical piece of the puzzle that law enforcement desperately needed to give a name back to the victim. The global reach of information, facilitated exponentially by modern communication technologies, often plays an unexpected yet profoundly pivotal role in even the most localized criminal investigations. In this particular case, the crucial outreach through the media, though primarily focused locally within the tri-state area, ultimately transcended continents, carrying the harrowing message far beyond the immediate boundaries of New York. The following morning, they receive a tip from halfway around the world. The sheer geographical distance of the tip's origin underscored the victim's likely international connections, hinting at a complex life lived across borders, and revealing a profound longing for reunification that would, with devastating finality, tragically never materialize. Police get a call from a man, Dale Brown, all the way from Guyana. Guyana, a small, vibrant English-speaking nation nestled on the North Atlantic coast of South America, was the distant, heartbroken homeland of the concerned caller, his voice undoubtedly tinged with a mix of growing dread and fading hope. His words carried the heavy, almost crushing weight of an impending tragedy, a chilling, persistent premonition that something truly terrible had befallen his cherished loved one. He thinks that the body parts found may be that of his wife, Chanel. The very notion of having to identify a spouse through fragmented, dehumanized remains speaks to a horror that most can scarcely begin to imagine, a profound and indelible trauma that would forever scar the lives of all those intimately involved, ripping apart the fabric of their existence. Dale Brown, the anguished husband, his voice thick with sorrow, began to relay the intimate details of their shared life and the recent, heartbreaking circumstances that had led to his beloved wife, Chanel, being in the United States. So far from home, he described, with a palpable sense of longing and hope, a young family tirelessly striving for a better, more secure future, a common and deeply moving narrative among countless immigrants seeking opportunity. Dale Brown says Chanel has been living and working in the United States while they made plans for him and their children to join her. This poignant pursuit of a collective, familial dream, often involving difficult and prolonged separations, added a profound layer of poignancy and heartbreak to Chanel's tragic and utterly undeserved fate. Their arrangement, dictated by the lengthy and complex immigration process, was one of constant, almost desperate communication, a digital lifeline stretching across thousands of miles and countless time zones, trying to keep their family connected despite the vast distances. We decided that she would go until we understand the whole immigration process, how the family could be together. We tried to do the check-in in the morning and in the night kind of thing with the children. This routine, a daily testament to their deep familial bond and their unwavering commitment to their children's future, made her sudden, inexplicable silence all the more alarming and unsettling, a chilling sign that something was gravely wrong. Dale, with a painful and precise clarity, pinpointed the last moment of their precious contact. Dale tells police the last time he spoke to Chanel was on the morning of July 5th. The days following this last call have been filled with a growing, suffocating dread, a pervasive anxiety that refused to be quelled by logical explanations. I was calling her, and I wasn't getting on to her. And I sent a few text messages, and they weren't answered. The unanswered calls and unreturned messages, initially dismissed by Dale as potential network issues, an impossibly busy schedule, or perhaps a temporary lost connection, quickly escalated from mere concern into a deep, pervasive, and ultimately terrifying fear. The detectives, understanding with keen insight the critical importance of distinct and irrefutable identifiers in confirming a victim's identity, pressed Dale for specific, descriptive information about Chanel. When detectives asked Dale if Chanel has any distinguishing marks, he says she does. It was at this crucial and highly emotional juncture that Dale's agonizingly recounted information began to align with chilling and undeniable precision with the physical evidence that had been painstakingly found at the scene. Dale tells Detective Chanel has 3 tattoos, one on each leg. One says CT, the other says Angel, and one on her arm that has her name, Chanel. This specific and highly personal detail was a precise and longed-for link the investigators had been so desperately searching for, a powerful beacon of grim certainty in the pervasive darkness of an unknown identity, a name to attach to the horrific remains. The initial ambiguity of the GT inscription observed on one leg immediately resolved, with a wave of sickening understanding, into the highly probable CT, matching Dale's poignant description of his wife's personal markings. Upon looking more closely at the tattoo that was on one of the legs, it could have been a CT. The profound alignment of all these intimate and harrowing details, though overwhelmingly horrifying, brought an agonizing and undeniable certainty. He sent me pictures, and at that point it looked like we had a tenet of ID. The bureaucratic, somewhat clinical term, tentative identification, could hardly begin to capture profound, emotional weight, the seismic shift from hope to despair of the moment for Dale. To confirm it's my wife. His confirmation was tinged with an indescribable, guttural anguish, a soul-wrenching moment where even the faintest glimmer of hope fully collapsed into crushing, irreversible despair. Sadness, it was so thick, it's like the air just changed. His evocative words painted a visceral, suffocating picture of raw, consuming grief. A world suddenly rendered bleak, silent, and entirely suffocating by the crushing, unbearable weight of such a tragic and irrefutable truth. Chanel Thompson, the vibrant, hopeful woman whose dreams stretched across an ocean, whose heart longed for family reunion, had been violently, mercilessly extinguished, her beautiful future stolen. Chanel Thompson's story, so cruelly truncated, had begun with hope and the promise of a bright future on November 6, 1986, in the country of Guyana, her birthplace, a small, vibrant gem nestled on the continent of South America, held deep cultural and personal significance for her and her loving family, shaping her identity. Beautiful Guyana, we're the only English-speaking country on the continent of South America. This geographical and linguistic distinctiveness is a source of immense national pride for Guyanese, people setting their nation apart and contributing to a rich, unique cultural identity rooted in heritage and community. Chanel's upbringing took place in a specific, idyllic rural enclave. Chanel grew up in Cumberland, Burbis. That's in the countryside. Life in such close-knit communities, particularly in the Guyanese countryside, often fosters exceptionally strong communal bonds, deeply ingrained family values, and a pervasive sense of shared existence. The culture in those communities, it's all about family. Everyone is like very social with each other. Everybody know everybody. This tightly knit social fabric would undoubtedly have shaped Chanel into a person deeply connected to her roots, someone who inherently valued kinship loyalty and the warmth of her community. She was remembered fondly and with deep affection by those who knew her well. Chanel was very friendly, very affectionate. These gentle, positive qualities painted a vivid and heartwarming picture of a warm, approachable, and loving individual, traits that made her eventual, horrific fate all the more tragic, difficult to comprehend, and utterly undeserved. She had a wonderful upbringing, and even though she had a great life there, there's always kind of this dream for people in the Caribbean that they want to come to America. This powerful, almost magnetic longing for the elusive American dream is a common, profound, and almost universal aspiration across the Caribbean diaspora, often fueled by the desperate desire for enhanced economic opportunity, greater educational prospects, and, crucially, a demonstrably better life for one's beloved children. It was precisely this powerful dream, a beacon of hope, that set the trajectory of Chanel's precious life and, ultimately and tragically, inexorably led her to New York, to a destiny she could never have foreseen. Chanel's father, a figure of immense strength, profound dedication, and relentless ambition, worked tirelessly, with every fiber of his being, to make this cherished dream a palpable reality for his family. Chanel's father worked hard to give the family a chance to make their American dreams come true. When he migrated to the U.S., he made sure all his children would ultimately join him. This powerful, multi-generational aspiration, a father's profound and selfless dedication to securing a future brighter than his own for his beloved offspring, stood as an inspiring testament to the powerful, enduring draw of opportunity and the deep sacrifices inherent in such a monumental quest. It also profoundly underscored the immense, often invisible, sacrifices families courageously make, frequently enduring long and painful periods of separation, emotional upheaval, and profound loneliness, all in the hope of achieving this elusive collective goal. It was during a time when Chanel herself was still patiently awaiting her own turn to immigrate, still dreaming of that brighter future across the ocean, that she met the man who would indelibly capture her heart and become the cherished father of her children, keeping her soul anchored for a time in Guyana. Chanel was 19 and still waiting for her turn to go when she met the man who would keep her heart in Guyana. Her story, at this pivotal point, subtly but significantly shifted from one of familial migration to one of nascent, burgeoning romance, a tender counterpoint to the more pragmatic currents of her life. Dale Brown recounted their first meeting with a warmth that, even through the present crushing sorrow, shone brightly, a vivid, cherished memory of young love blooming under the warm, generous Guyanese sun, a precious fragment of happiness in a world now so dark. I was with some friends at a popular creek. I saw her smiling at me, right? And I went across and I said, "Is this seat taken, right?" She said, "Well, the seat had water." So I said, "No, I'm not going to sit out in the water. You know," she laughed, "like I didn't even see the water, to be honest, right? I just saw her." This charming, light-hearted exchange, a vignette of youthful flirtation, marked the innocent beginning of their shared journey together, a snapshot of pure, unadulterated infatuation, and an undeniable, magnetic connection that transcended trivialities. Their profound bond grew quickly, organically, fueled by shared aspirations, mutual respect, and a deep appreciation for each other's qualities. We were young, trying to get ourselves established. You know, I love her approach to life. You know, she was very smart. She always challenged my thinking, and she knew how to make me laugh. These compelling attributes, her keen intelligence, her spirited, challenging intellect, and her joyful, infectious disposition, painted a beautiful, vivid portrait of Chanel as a vibrant, engaging, and deeply thoughtful individual. Their relationship deepened rapidly, organically, and with profound emotional resonance, naturally leading to a significant life event within a mere year. Within a year of dating, Dale and Chanel found out she was pregnant. This life-altering discovery solidified their deep commitment to each other and, with a tender urgency, accelerated their plans for a fully shared future, united as a family. We knew that we started this journey together, that we were in this together, and the only right thing to do was to get married. So I proposed. We got married in Guyana at the church that we attended together. I remember that day. It was a good day. The cherished memory of their wedding day, a sacred symbol of profound hope, shared joy, and new beginnings, stood in stark, heartbreaking contrast to the grim and unbearable reality that now utterly consumed Dale's life, a brutal juxtaposition of past happiness and present, soul-crushing grief. Soon after the joyful, celebrated birth of their daughter, Gabrielle, the eagerly awaited call came that would irrevocably set in motion Chanel's momentous journey to the United States. Soon after the birth of their daughter, Gabrielle, Chanel's father sent word that her visa had been approved. The visa approval was far more than a mere bureaucratic formality. It was a momentous, life-altering occasion, the long-awaited gateway to the elusive and highly coveted American dream that their family had so diligently pursued. However, with this profound joy came a wrenching, agonizing dilemma, as the often rigid strictures of immigration requirements frequently necessitate difficult, heartbreaking choices about family separation. Once you get that visa, you have to travel at a certain time. You have to make the difficult decision for her to go, and Gabrielle would stay with me. We didn't want the opportunity to be lost. This wrenching decision, prioritizing a future collective good for the entire family over immediate familial unity, a sacrifice of present comfort for future security, powerfully highlighted profound and often invisible sacrifices courageously made by immigrant families around the globe. It was a calculated, albeit deeply painful risk undertaken with a firm, unshakable belief that their temporary separation, however agonizing, would ultimately lead to a stronger, more stable, and profoundly united future together, to facilitate the complex immigration process and establish the foundational stability required for their family's reunification. Chanel's father emphasized the absolute necessity of a sustained, consistent presence and a stable livelihood in the United States. Her father said she needs to stay and have a stable job here in the U.S. For the subsequent several years, Chanel maintained a transient yet purposeful existence, her heart and efforts divided between two nations and two profoundly important roles, that of a hopeful immigrant diligently establishing herself in the bustling, demanding environment of the U.S. and that of a loving, deeply devoted mother to her growing family still anchored in Guyana. For the next several years, Chanel traveled between the two countries and gave birth to 3 more children. This demanding dual life, while undoubtedly challenging and filled with moments of intense longing, was a powerful testament to her unwavering dedication to her family's long-term aspirations and her profound selflessness. She eventually settled into a more permanent living arrangement in New York, a vital step in her journey. She moved in New York where she stayed with her sisters. This invaluable sisterly support network provided a crucial sense of family, belonging, an emotional anchor in a new, often overwhelming and impersonal city, mitigating the profound isolation many immigrants experience. Meanwhile, the bedrock of their family life, the constant in a world of flux, remained steadfast in Guyana. Meanwhile, Dale remained in Guyana where he cared for their 4 children. This division of labor, though inherently difficult and filled with daily sacrifices, was deeply rooted in their shared, unwavering ambitions and collective family goals. Her ambitions were tied to family goals, and it was tied to her children and the life that she wanted to have for them. Every sacrifice, every moment of aching separation, every instance of personal longing was endured with the ultimate, singular vision of a brighter, more prosperous future for her beloved offspring, a future worth any temporary pain. Her eldest daughter, Gabrielle, echoed this profound understanding. Preserving her mother's memory with deep love and immense pride, Daddy always tells her that she only wanted the best for us. By 2013, a year etched in memory, the family was on the precipice, trembling with anticipation, of realizing their long-held, cherished dream of reunification. In 2013, they began making plans for Dale and the children to join her. This pivotal phase was marked by meticulous planning, fervent discussions, and hopeful anticipation. As they diligently mapped out the bureaucratic labyrinth of U.S. immigration, a notoriously complex and arduous journey, we kind of mapped out, what needed to be done to immigrate to the U.S. It's such a lengthy process, The intricate, often glacially slow, and profoundly uncertain nature of the immigration system underscored their enduring patience, relentless determination, and their unwavering shared vision. They were agonizingly on the verge of overcoming the final hurdles, carefully preparing for a joyful, long-awaited reunification that had been years, almost a decade, in the making, a dream so close to becoming reality. But fate, in its cruelest and most unforgiving twist, intervened with devastating finality, crushing their hopes with merciless precision. But the long-awaited family reunion would never take place. Instead, their beautiful, painstakingly built dream dissolved into an incomprehensible, unspeakable nightmare as the horrific news from Bayshore became an undeniable, soul-crushing reality. Instead, Chanel has become the victim of a horrific murder, and Suffolk County Police are trying to determine why. The immediate, urgent focus of the investigation now transcended mere identification. It centered, agonizingly and pivotally, on a profoundly disturbing why. What dark, malignant force, what incomprehensible malice could possibly fuel such an extreme, savage act against a woman whose life was so deeply devoted to her family, to their future, and to the innocent pursuit of a better life? The sheer, unfathomable barbarity of the crime deeply affected everyone involved, from the most seasoned and world-weary detectives to bewildered, terrified community at large. The investigators, grappling with the incomprehensible and grotesque nature of the attack, try to fit it into any recognizable framework of human crime. This body being dismembered, just this level of viciousness that comes to mind. Who would do something like this? This visceral reaction, echoing the sentiment of pure revulsion, highlighted a crucial element of violent crime analysis. The motive for dismemberment often profoundly transcends simple homicide, carrying additional layers of meaning and intent. It can be born of an intense, uncontrollable personal rage, a calculated desire to completely conceal identity, a method to facilitate transport of an unwieldy body, or, most often, a terrifying combination of all these chilling elements. The particular viciousness observed in this case strongly suggests a profound and deeply personal connection between the victim and her killer, where the brutal act itself carried a chilling symbolic weight far beyond mere killing, aimed at absolute dehumanization. To the general public, the horrifying details evoked an alarmingly familiar and terrifyingly recent terror that had once gripped the entire region. To residents of the waterfront community, the details of the murder are alarmingly familiar. This feeling of criminal déjà vu was not imagined or merely a collective psychological projection. It stemmed directly from the unhealed wounds of past, unsolved crimes that continued to fester in the public consciousness. Just 3 years ago, when we had these same headlines coming out about the Gilbo Beach murders and body parts being found, the lingering, menacing shadow of the infamous Gilgo Beach serial killer, a persistent source of profound fear and immense frustration for law enforcement and the public alike, loomed undeniably large over the current, burgeoning investigation. The parallels were, for a terrifying moment, impossible to ignore, forcing the investigators to confront the unsettling and profoundly disturbing possibility of a returning, elusive predator, or perhaps a new, equally brutal perpetrator, meticulously mimicking the terrifying signature of the old. We did have a serial killer that had dumped numerous bodies on Long Island. It was obviously a consideration of ours whether there's any connection to Gilbo, this professional obligation to consider all angles, however unsettling or improbable they might initially seem, underscored the immense gravity and high stakes of the unfolding situation. The possibility of an active serial killer, particularly one with such a gruesome and specific signature, placed an unbearable amount of pressure on law enforcement agencies and sent devastating waves of anxiety and paralyzing fear through the populace, creating a sense of widespread panic. The pervasive tension within the community, already stretched taut by the initial discovery, intensified exponentially as new, chilling developments began to surface, mirroring the systematic dismemberment of the victim. The ominous phrase coming up, "more body parts turn up," in early news reports signaled a continuation of the gruesome and deeply unsettling pattern, solidifying public fears into a palpable dread. The detailed recounting of these new, horrific finds only added to the mounting horror, each discovery a cruel confirmation of an escalating nightmare. A person had found what appeared to be an arm in his hedges, in his front yard. The utter randomness of these discoveries, transforming ordinary, domestic residential areas, once symbols of safety and normalcy, into sites of horrific revelation, amplified the collective terror, ripping apart any remaining illusions of security. Detectives found themselves in a desperate, frantic race against time and an unseen, malevolent adversary, pressured by every conceivable factor to act decisively and swiftly. Detectives must act quickly to determine if a serial killer has struck again. The stakes were immense, profoundly high, if this was indeed a resurgence of the Gilgo Beach killer, a return of the nightmare, or a new, equally brutal perpetrator taking inspiration from past atrocities. The safety, tranquility, and peace of mind of an entire region were at immediate catastrophic risk. The grim recollections of the past served as a haunting, chilling reminder of the painstaking, often agonizing, work involved in previous, still unsolved cases. They discover one body, then another body, and then all of a sudden we have 4 bodies that turn up. This previously observed cascading sequence of discoveries loomed as a dire and chilling warning, emphasizing the critical and desperate need to halt the current progression before any more innocent victims were lost, before the nightmare could spiral further out of control, threatening the entire fabric of society. The immediate investigative imperative, therefore, was to thoroughly and meticulously review past cases, a somber and emotionally draining walk through unsolved tragedies, poring over every detail and searching for any faint thread that might definitively connect the present horror to the past, or perhaps distinguish it entirely. The case files of the previous Gilgo victims were meticulously reopened, each page a poignant, silent testament to lost lives and the enduring frustration of an unapprehended killer, a haunting echo from the recent past. The murder and dismemberment of Chanel Brown bears the hallmarks of the unidentified Gilbo Beach serial killer. This initial working assessment, based on the horrifying modus operandi of systematic dismemberment and the scattered method of disposal, naturally presented a stark and terrifying possibility to the seasoned investigators. The original Gilgo investigation itself had begun under entirely different circumstances. Initially conceived as a missing persons inquiry that, tragically and unexpectedly, took a much darker, more expansive turn. It all started actually during an investigation looking for this girl who had gone missing. This unexpected and profoundly disturbing pivot from a search for a single missing person to the horrifying discovery of multiple victims, scattered across vast stretches of coastline, starkly illustrated the unpredictable, often brutal, nature of such complex and high-stakes criminal cases. In the course of trying to locate her, we started coming across bodies, and they discover one body, then another body, and then all of a sudden we have 4 bodies that turn up. This cascading discovery, unfolded between 2010 to 2011, ultimately revealed a deeply disturbing and consistent pattern. Police began finding more and more body parts near Gilbo Beach, mainly sex workers, women in their 20s. This particular victimology and the disturbing geographical proximity to previous crime scenes created a strong, if terrifying, initial association with Chanel's case. So when Chanel was killed, that brought that all back up. The public, still visibly scarred by the lingering memory of those past, unresolved atrocities, naturally and instinctively made the same connection, fueling widespread, palpable fear and intense community anxiety. Despite the passage of a full 3 years since the Gilbo Beach crimes, the immediate and instinctive law enforcement response was to cast a wide net, deploying extensive search teams to meticulously sweep the areas specifically associated with those previous cases. Hoping against hope, search teams sweep the area for Chanel's remains. It was a desperate, exhaustive, and psychologically taxing effort, driven by the slim hope of recovering additional evidence, confirming a link, or, at the very least, bringing more tangible closure to Chanel's shattered and grieving family. A small measure of peace in a world now so filled with chaos. However, just as the investigation began to lean heavily towards a direct, terrifying connection with the notorious Gilgo Beach cases, a crucial new development, seemingly related yet spatially distinct and forensically nuanced, emerged, forcing a dramatic and necessary reconsideration. A critical call from a neighboring county initiated an immediate redirection of precious resources, an investigative focus, a necessary and painful pivot in the investigative trajectory. But call from a neighboring county redirects the investigation. This seemingly minor shift in geography, moving from Suffolk to Nassau County, would ultimately prove to be profoundly significant, fundamentally altering the course of the inquiry. The day after the discovery of the body, I was tasked to go to Hempstead, where a call had been made that a person had found what appeared to be an arm in his hedges and his front yard. Hempstead, a bustling and densely populated town nestled in Nassau County, bordering Suffolk County, where Chanel's torso had been initially found, suddenly became a focal point. The specific detail from the initial caller was both disturbing and potentially helpful. He believed it to be that of a female because her fingernails were long. While not definitively conclusive on its own, this initial, albeit observational, assessment aligned with the known victim's gender, offering a tentative piece of the puzzle. Initially, however, definitive forensic confirmation linking this newly discovered arm directly to Chanel remained. Agonizingly elusive, a frustrating setback for the team. The arm lacks distinguishing features, so detectives are unable to confirm it belongs to Chanel Thompson Brown. This temporary setback meant that the gruesome tally of unknown body parts was, for a short time, disturbingly growing, intensifying the pressure on the already overstretched teams to find concrete answers. The relentless, almost methodical pace of discovery continued unabated, a chilling narrative unfolding with each passing hour, deepening the horror and the mystery. The next day, another arm is found about a half a mile away. The sequential scattering of remains, moving gradually further away from the original dumping ground, painted an increasingly clear picture of a perpetrator systematically disposing of evidence, deliberately dispersing the horrific remains to confound investigators. Crucially, this second arm offered an incredibly vital forensic link, bridging the gap between previously disparate discoveries. It's an arm that has a manicure that matches the manicure from the first. This subtle but forensically significant detail, the consistent manicure, immediately suggested an undeniable connection between the two newly discovered limbs, proving they belonged to the same victim. Then, with a gasp of grim relief for the investigators, came the definitive breakthrough that dramatically reoriented the investigation, finally offering concrete and irrefutable confirmation of Chanel's remained beyond the torso and legs that had first been found. We could connect that almost immediately to Chanel, because the arm that was found had a tattoo with her name on it, the distinctive tattoo, her name etched indelibly onto her skin, definitively and unequivocally identified this arm as belonging to Chanel Thompson Brown, closing a crucial chapter of uncertainty. The confirmation, though bringing a degree of grim closure for the investigators and an answer to Dale Brown, also immediately ignited widespread and uncontrollable panic in the surrounding community. You can imagine in that neighborhood the fear, people wondering what is going on. The unfolding horror, no longer an abstract fear or a distant headline, but a series of tangible, grotesque discoveries encroaching upon their very doorsteps, deeply unsettled and terrified the residents, transforming their familiar neighborhoods into landscapes of dread. However, as investigators, with professional objectivity and careful forensic analysis, began to meticulously analyze the burgeoning and disturbing evidence, a crucial and undeniable distinction started to emerge between Chanel's brutal murder and the grim, signature patterns of the Gilgo Beach serial killer. The subtle nuances of the violence, the specific methods of dismemberment, subtly suggested a different perpetrator entirely. But the more investigators analyzed the Gilgo Beach serial killer, the less they believe Chanel is his latest victim. This analytical shift was fundamentally rooted in observable, forensic differences in the method of dismemberment. When looking at the body, it appeared to have been hacked brutally, not with precision, but in haste and quite violent. I would not think a serial killer would do this. He'd be a little bit more careful. The chilling description, hacked brutally, contrasted sharply and definitively with the more careful, almost surgically precise dismemberment observed in some high-profile serial killer cases. This qualitative difference strongly suggested a crime driven by a profoundly different psychological profile, perhaps one of uncontrolled, explosive rage, a sudden panicked haste, or an act of overwhelming fury, rather than the methodical, almost ritualistic acts sometimes meticulously employed by serial offenders as part of their signature. Furthermore, and critically, the geographical distribution of Chanel's remains deviated significantly from the previous killers, established in predictable patterns, adding another compelling argument against a direct link. The two limbs were also found outside the killer's usual dumping grounds. The specific dumping grounds of serial perpetrators often become an integral part of their distinct signature, an almost ritualistic return to specific types of isolated locations, providing a perverse sense of control and consistency. This unmistakable divergence in both violent method and specific geographical location proved to be a critical indicator, a compelling reason to dismiss a direct connection. It just didn't appear, due to several factors, that this was related to Gilbo Beach. The cumulative weight of this professional assessment led to a necessary public reassurance, meticulously crafted and immediately released, aimed at allaying widespread, mounting panic, though it likely offered little immediate, profound comfort to a profoundly traumatized public grappling with a new, equally horrific reality. They had to actually put out a press release to tell people, no, we do not believe this is the Gilbo Beach killer. We do not believe that this is happening again. Despite the official, carefully worded announcement, the oppressive shadow of fear, once deeply ingrained, stubbornly lingered over the affected communities. The official announcement does little to calm area residents. Such deeply ingrained public fear, once violently ignited by horrific events, is not easily extinguished, particularly when another equally brutal and unsettling crime has just taken place, bringing renewed terror to their doorsteps. The palpable possibility of a new, equally depraved killer, or even a grotesque copycat specifically inspired by previous atrocities, still held the entire community hostage to an overwhelming sense of dread and terror. And police are now left with the possibility of a copycat. This particular scenario, that of a copycat killer, presents its own unique set of psychological challenges for seasoned investigators. As a mimic might intentionally ape specific aspects of a previous crime to deliberately mislead, to sensationalize their own acts or to sow confusion, further complicating the search for justice. The atmosphere of apprehension, therefore, was undeniably palpable, a heavy blanket of anxiety settling over the towns. People were very nervous. The department was under a lot of pressure. The immense weight of public expectation and demand for swift answers, coupled inextricably with the inherent difficulty and profound emotional toll of the investigation itself, created an environment of intense, relentless scrutiny and profound urgency for law enforcement personnel. However, through it all, the veteran investigators, disciplined by years of training, maintained their unwavering focus, their commitment a beacon of unwavering dedication to the critical task at hand. But I'm going to be honest with you, we're so focused on our investigation that we kind of block out the outside noise and focus on what we have to do. This single-minded determination, a necessary coping mechanism in high-pressure, emotionally charged situations, allowed them to maintain professional distance, objectivity, and an unshakable resolve. By July 10th, a mere 2 days after the initial discovery, the full, harrowing extent of the grim findings was clearer, though one vital and critical piece of the victim remained agonizingly elusive. As of July 10th, now we had the torso, both legs and both arms, and the only substantial part of the body that we were missing was the head. The head, crucial for definitive positive identification, often revealing significant perimortem trauma, and essential for reconstructing the victim's identity, remained a missing, heartbreaking puzzle piece, compelling the grim reality for detectives. We're basically following a trail of body parts. Each discovery, however harrowing, however repulsive, provided another vital data point, slowly but surely drawing them closer to understanding the spatial narrative of the crime and, by chilling extension, the precise, methodical movements of the perpetrator. With the scattered human remains now meticulously recovered, painstakingly identified, and the victim's identity irrevocably confirmed, the investigation, with grim determination, pivoted decisively to understanding the how, and more importantly, the profound why of Chanel's horrific murder. With little indication as to who might have killed Chanel, detectives looked to the autopsy for new leads. The autopsy, a critical and indispensable stage in any homicide investigation. provided the first harrowing and deeply unsettling glimpse into the true, violent nature of Chanel's final, brutal moments. During the autopsy, it was discovered that she had 39 stab wounds to her body. 39 stab wounds. The sheer, staggering number speaks profound volumes. It's not a single efficient fatal blow or a series of limited, purposeful wounds, but a furious, almost maniacal flurry of violent acts, often chillingly indicative of an overwhelming, uncontrollable emotional response rather than a purely efficient, dispassionate killing. With those type of injuries, my first thought is this is up close and personal. This deduction, born from extensive experience and countless hours spent examining victims of violent crime, suggests an intimate physical proximity to the victim during the attack, a visceral, terrifying lack of distance that is characteristically present in crimes of profound passion or acts of extreme, uncontrolled rage. The brutality itself, in its sheer, overwhelming force, conveyed a potent and unmistakable message to the investigators. There's rage there, there's passion there. These raw, primal emotions, often powerful, unpredictable, and devastating drivers of human behavior, frequently manifest themselves in frenzied, uncontrolled, and utterly dehumanizing violence. Such an intimate and intense attack, particularly when it escalates to such extreme levels, usually points unequivocally to a significant and often turbulent relationship dynamic between the victim and the perpetrator, suggesting a shared history or a deep-seated grievance. I feel at first glance this victim knew who the perpetrator was. This inference, based on the intimate, intense, and deeply personal nature of the assault, narrowed the scope of potential suspects considerably, pointing the investigative compass directly towards someone within Chanel's immediate circle. The murder, therefore, was not random. It was, with terrifying certainty, deeply personal, rooted in an emotional cataclysm. To further develop the victimology, a comprehensive and nuanced understanding of Chanel's entire life, her habits, her aspirations, her daily routines, and, critically, her relationships, was absolutely paramount. Investigators, therefore, turned with somber resolve to the person who, perhaps more than anyone else, knew her best, her devoted husband, Dale Brown. Investigators contact Chanel's husband, Dale Brown, for a more complete victimology. Dale's insights, though undoubtedly painful to recount, painted a remarkably consistent and poignant picture of a woman focused with laser-like intensity on her beloved family and their shared future. Dale tells him that for the past year, she'd been working for a large Manhattan apartment store. Her professional life in the demanding environment of New York was a key, central component of her elusive American dream, a practical means to a cherished end for her children and for Dale, a stepping stone to their collective future. Chanel loved her job, and if she could have worked overtime to make an extra dollar, she did that. She wasn't a person that went out partying at all. She was more or less a homebody. This deeply human description portrayed Chanel as a diligent, disciplined, and remarkably focused individual, driven by a powerful, unshakable work ethic and an unequivocally clear sense of purpose that centered on her family. Her personal life, far from being expansive or prone to excessive socialization or nightlife, was narrowly defined by her immense responsibilities and her singular commitments to her loved ones. Given her profoundly focused schedule and her deliberate emphasis on work and family goals, Chanel's social circle in the U.S. was naturally limited, centering primarily around her professional life and her sisters. With her busy schedule, Chanel's only social outlet were the people she worked with. It was precisely within this constrained and somewhat insular environment that she formed a friendship, initially appearing innocuous and even supportive, that would tragically and unexpectedly define her final, harrowing days. Dale says she became friends with a woman named Leah Cuevas. Leah Cuevas, the woman who would soon become the focal point and prime suspect in this agonizing case, was initially described, often by those who knew her superficially, with an aura of sociability, warmth, and even charm. Leah, she was pretty friendly. She was bubbly. I would say she always had a Bible with her that I saw. She was just a fun person. These superficial descriptions, friendly, bubbly, ostensibly religious, belied a far darker, more manipulative, and ultimately malevolent core that would later be chillingly exposed. The connection between Chanel and Leah was, at first glance, deepened by seemingly shared experiences as immigrants, a common and powerful bond often forged in new and often overwhelming environments, where familiar cultural touchstones provide comfort. She was also from an immigrant background. She was Trinidadian, and Chanel was from Guyana, so they had that connection between them, and it formed a bond. This shared heritage, originating from Caribbean nations, naturally created an immediate sense of kinship and camaraderie, making the eventual brutal betrayal even more shocking and unfathomable. Leah's life, from an outward perspective, appeared to be one of stability, domestic partnership, and apparent success. Her husband is Dominican, and he owned a bodega in the neighborhood. They had this life that they were building together. The image of a married couple actively running a small business often projects an outward appearance of normalcy, stability, and rootedness within a community, a life to aspire to. This outward portrayal, consciously or unconsciously, likely resonated deeply with Chanel's own earnest aspirations for a family, making Leah's situation appear as an achievable, tangible model for her own American dream. And, of course, you can imagine that Chanel was ultimately looking for that for her and Dale and their children. Leah, seizing with cunning precision on Chanel's profound vulnerability, her pressing need for affordable housing, and her trusting nature, extended an offer that, on its surface, seemed almost too good to be true, a seemingly compassionate gesture that, in retrospect, tragically masked insidious and predatory intent. Leah's calculated offer to assist Chanel by providing housing at an unbelievably low, almost unheard of, rate seemed nothing short of a godsend to Chanel, a crucial and fortuitous step in building her new life in the notoriously expensive, competitive landscape of New York City. Leah understood the struggles of immigrant life and offered to help by renting Chanel a room in her Brooklyn brownstone at a discount. The terms of the supposed arrangement were exceptionally favorable, bordering on the altruistic. She was paying about $400 for rent, and which included utilities. $400 for rent. I mean, that's unheard of. That is a deal that no one would ever want to pass up in New York, where rents are so high, in a city renowned globally for its exorbitant housing costs and cutthroat rental market. Such an offer would universally appear as an act of profound generosity, genuine kindness, and true friendship, standing in stark and welcome contrast to harsh, transactional realities of urban living. Chanel, driven by her practical goals, her pressing need for affordability, and her inherently trusting nature, gratefully, and perhaps somewhat naively, accepted Leah's ostensibly kind offer. Leah was offered the opportunity, and she jumped on it. The proximity of their living arrangement further fostered their growing bond, seemingly transforming workplace acquaintances into close, interdependent neighbors, sharing a wall and, presumably, aspects of their daily lives. Leah lived in the same building, just downstairs. This caused the two of them to grow really close. This immediate proximity, while initially deepening their friendship and fostering a sense of shared community, would tragically and inexorably lead to a fatal entanglement, a closeness that would, in time, become suffocatingly dangerous for Chanel. However, the seemingly idyllic friendship, carefully constructed on a foundation of deceit, eventually began to sour, revealing, slowly at first, the treacherous cracks in Leah's carefully curated facade of benevolence and honesty. But Dale says something changed shortly before Chanel was killed. The shift was subtle at first, an almost imperceptible alteration in their dynamic, but profoundly significant, a precursor to the devastating storm that would inevitably erupt. The day before she was murdered, she told me that there was an incident with her, an argument with her and Leah, and that she wanted to move. This desperate desire to move, conveyed with an underlying sense of urgency and emotional distress, immediately flagged Leah as a person of intense interest to the investigators, directly connecting her to the victim's final, tumultuous days. Chanel's unfortunate reluctance to share the full scope and harrowing details of the dispute with her husband hinted at a deeper, more troubling, and perhaps profoundly unsettling conflict, one she was perhaps trying to manage on her own. But she didn't share much in terms of the details. This vagueness, though understandably frustrating for detectives, meticulously trying to piece together a coherent narrative, often occurs when victims are attempting to manage rapidly escalating tensions, are deeply hesitant to reveal unsettling or shameful truths about someone they once considered a close, trusted friend, or are simply attempting to protect themselves from further emotional distress. The seeds of betrayal had clearly been sown. Following this critical, burgeoning lead, investigators immediately turned their focused attention to the last known, verified location of Chanel's vibrant life, the Brooklyn apartment building she had, with such hope, shared with Leah. Investigators traveled to Brooklyn apartment building where Chanel and Leah both lived. Leah, perhaps already sensing the impending and inevitable inquiry, or merely acting on her characteristic instinct for evasion, was conspicuously absent, her apartment dark and silent. Leah isn't there, so they speak to some of the other residents. These other tenants, residing in close proximity, often privy to subtle dynamics, the whispered rumors, and the unspoken tension simmering within a shared living space, held potentially vital and revelatory information. The spatial arrangement of the apartments within the brownstone, meticulously documented, provided crucial context. She lived on the second floor of a brownstone. Leah Cuevas lived downstairs from her, and there was another couple that rented across down the hallway from her, a Jamaican couple. The Jamaican couple, sharing the same floor in immediate proximity as Chanel, were prime, unsuspecting witnesses to the daily interactions between the two women and, crucially, to the recent, terrifyingly escalating conflict. The detective who established initial contact with them, employing practiced discretion and empathy, articulated the direct and immediate objective of the interview. I located the couple that she resided with on the second-floor apartment regarding what took place over the past weekend. What the shell-shocked witnesses fearfully revealed was an explosive narrative of elaborate deception, escalating tensions, and a calculated, merciless scam. Witnesses say that Leah and Chanel, they had an argument so huge that police were called. The unprecedented involvement of actual law enforcement, not once but twice, typically indicates a significant and dangerous escalation far beyond typical garden-variety neighborly disputes, pointing unequivocally to a deep-seated, simmering, and potentially dangerous conflict. The true and ugly nature of Leah's supposed generosity was, with stark clarity, exposed, unraveling an insidious and carefully constructed scheme of exploitation. Then it was discovered that Leah Cuevas was posing as if she owned the building and charging people rent, and it came out that she didn't own it. This shocking revelation, delivered with a sense of moral outrage, was an undeniable game-changer, ripping apart Leah's veneer of respectability, the entire premise of Leah's supposed benevolence. Her seemingly altruistic offer of impossibly cheap rent was in fact nothing more than a sophisticated, heartless fraud, immediately positioning her as the undeniable primary suspect in Chanel's disappearance. At this point, Leah Cuevas was looking as our number one suspect at that time.